I feel like, Jasmine, seeing you, that I immediately need to say certainty enters the library and faces the rules sage. What does she say?
I've I've come to learn at your feet. I think that's immediately what she would say. Thank you so much for sitting down with me to discuss the new player's handbook. There's so many changes, so many of them I'm so excited for. To start off, in addition to being the principal rules designer for Dungeons and Dragons, did I get your title correct?
I recently became the game's game director.
Huh! Oh my goodness, congratulations.
Thank you.
But in addition to this prestigious title, you hold another one, which is Dungeon Master for Acquisitions Incorporated. So I have to ask you about the path of the World Tree Barbarian, since we have Bobby Zimmerowski in our game, who is from the World Tree. Did you know how hard was that to keep under wraps? Did you know that that was going to happen? Was that a part of Bobby's backstory? And how do you think it's going to impact our game, if it will at all?
So, no pressure to our beloved Xavier Woods, WWE superstar, but I would not be sad if Bobby became a World Tree Barbarian. Because the team that works on the core books, we're all players and DMs ourselves. We cannot help but do design influenced by our own play and DMing experience. So I've been DMing for a character deeply connected, a barbarian deeply connected to the World Tree for years now. So that probably had an influence.
And the World Tree Barbarians have a way of actually granting their party temporary hit points. Is that correct?
Yes. And also some really spectacular teleportation. And one of my favorite abilities that they have, which in our design meetings we often referred to as the get over here ability, is they can use the spectral roots of the World Tree to haul people over to them. So they're going to be a terror for creatures that are trying to run away from them, and they're like, nope, back over here.
That's amazing. In a sort of similar vein, there have been some changes to sort of the way actions work in the new player's handbook. In the past, I know you've ruled that there's no rule in D&D that prevents the player from casting 2 spells per turn, but now with magic sort of being its own action, how does this affect that, if at all?
So we have a rules change that I'm excited about that is hanging out in the new spell chapter, where rather than having a limitation built into bonus spell casting, there is a new different rule that simply states that you can cast only 1 spell per turn with a spell slot. This really kind of simplifies the base rules. So that actually allows what was possible before, where you could cast a first level or higher spell, and then if you had a bonus action ability, then your second spell could be a cantrip or vice versa. This just makes it a simpler, universal rule that once per turn you can cast a spell with a spell slot. But if you have other ways to cast spells that don't expend spell slots and you have a bonus action, you are good to go.
Amazing. With changes to the fighter action surge, does this mean that my fighter wizard multiclass is dead? Did you do that just to stop certainty from action surging and casting 2 spells?
I have DM'd a number of characters who multiclassed into fighter, not to be a fighter, but just for the spellcasting loophole in the old action surge. So yes, it was an intentional change to close that loophole, because action surge was never meant to be a spellcasting boost. We wanted it to be all about just making the fighter better at being a fighter.
Now, I know that there's been so many changes to warlocks, which I tend to play warlocks a lot. A lot of people don't know that about me, but they're one of my favorite classes. I'm so excited about Eldritch Invocations being available from level 1. But at the first glance, it seems like Armor of Shadows is the only level 1 invocation a warlock can take. I understand not having Agonizing Blast at level 1 because that might be too much of a tune-up. But I was curious, why not Beast Speech? Beast Speech. And are there any plans to include more level 1 Eldritch Invocations in the future?
You're in luck, because there are actually 5 that are available at first level. So in addition to Armor of Shadows, there's also Eldritch Mind and the 3 Pact Eldritch Invocations: Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Chain, and Pact of the Tome. Now, Beast Speech is not present because we added Speak with Animals to the Warlock's core spell list. There are a number of tweaks that we made to the Warlock that were connected to changes we made on the Warlock spell list. But more invocations, almost certainly. Invocations are so fun to design. And now that we've made the Warlock even more modular than it was before, it means we as game designers will not be able to fight the temptation to add more toys for in the future for warlocks to consider as they decide what kind of warlock they're going to be.
In a similar vein, speaking of spell list changes, I noticed that also as a bard, sorry, I have to keep it making it about me, there's the new bard cantrip, Starry Wisp. Do you see this as potentially being a more economic version of Fairy Fire, or was there another intended use for this in the bard/druid kit?
So Starry Wisp has 2 main purposes. One, and you're exactly right, it's basically Fairy Fire with a coupon. And so, yeah, if you're trying to save, use your spell energy, Starry Wisp is the way to go. But also really important to us is we wanted to give the bard and the druid another ranged cantrip option to supplement what they already had, because previously the bard basically just had Vicious Mockery. And the druid mostly was relying on Produce Flame. And so we wanted them to get a new option that was functionally very different from the cantrips that they already had.
Yeah, I'll definitely admit that having this option in Baldur's Gate 3 would have drastically changed my playthrough, having a nice radiant damage option, which is noticeably missing from my spell list. I also wanted to talk about the changes to inspiration. Now, rules as written previously kind of made it clear that there were only certain types of roles you could use this for, but now it seems like the words have kind of been changed to sort of imply that any die could be replaced as long as it was singular. Does this mean that you could technically use inspiration to reroll a death save or even a damage die, or is that not the intended use?
That is the intended use. So we transformed heroic inspiration partly because we wanted it to feel better to use along with advantage. Previously, inspiration was fun, but the issue with it is it was occupying the same space as regular advantage. And there are so many ways in the game to get advantage. And so we really wanted heroic inspiration to feel special, particularly because we constrain it. Like, once you have one, you're not going to get another until you use the one that you have. And so to really make it feel special, we decided, you know what? This is your open-ended reroll. And again, I cannot deny that my experiences as DM at the Acquisitions Incorporated table with Jerry rolling ones on almost every healing spell, I had that in mind when writing the new rules, because it means now even a healer, if they do that heart-dropping horrible roll on their healing spell, could grab one of those dice and use their heroic inspiration to re-roll it.
Yeah, it's definitely a game changer. I would say the other big game changer that kind of stuck out to me was the changes to surprise. Previously, being surprised was great if you were the one doing the surprising, but horrible if you were the one being surprised. What was the intent behind kind of removing surprise as what I feel is a condition and turning it into something that doesn't make the pendulum, I guess, swing so drastically in one direction?
Yeah, we for some time have felt that surprise had too disruptive of a role in the game because we've all had those experiences playing the game where one side gets surprised and just gets annihilated, sometimes before it can even do anything meaningful. Now, that can be fun like once maybe, but
Yeah.
if that starts happening too much, that can really start uh, taking all of this sort of excitement about what's going on in combat out of the room. And so we wanted there to still be an advantage, pun intended, to getting the jump on your opponents. And so that's why we turned it into, if you do, you have advantage on your initiative rolls, because we do want you to have a better chance to go before them, but we don't want at the same time to completely shut them down.
Yeah.
Which, especially with a very high CR creature, and if you're fighting only one of them,
Mhm.
that can make it so even a dragon is just sort of crouching there like a piñata as the party just destroys it.
100%. I think I have time for one last question, and it's going to be kind of a jokey one. I know that much like me, you are also, sometimes enjoyer of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Of the new 2024 player handbook subclasses, which one do you think Charlie Kelly would be?
Oh my gosh. So because Charlie loves rats and crawling around in the sewers so much, and Charlie
Nightcrawlers.
work and night crawlers, I feel like Charlie would be a rogue. That's one possibility.
Mhm.
Or a monk and would be a warrior of shadow, crouching around in the shadows. So I'm actually going to go with, for now, I might think of another answer. I think for now, a warrior of shadows, because part of it is just as the warrior of shadows magically is teleporting around in darkness. I don't know how Charlie goes through all that sewage and comes out mysteriously never covered with it.
True. D goes in once and has a negative experience, but Charlie
Right.
somehow always comes out with gems and precious fibers. Thank you so much for your precious nuggets of wisdom today, Jeremy. It was wonderful to sit and talk shop with you about the new player's handbook.
Oh, so glad to do it, and always wonderful to see you.